It all started with me being sacked. But I figured that the only possible way of me not being sacked anymore was me starting my own business. After much soul searching, I came up with the idea while I was having breakfast one morning of a brand to charge your mobile phones called Juice. I'd worked in mobile phone accessories before, supplying retailers, so I thought, okay, well, I don't think anyone's doing a good enough job in that market. I think everyone's really boring. No one's taking any chances of design. No one's really trying to do anything different. So I opened my laptop and went to Google and literally typed in, how do you start a business? And I sat there making notes off the Google pages and then booked my flights to China. I remember arriving at the airport and feeling like it was really, really busy and everyone was rushing around and it felt like the whole world was in slow motion. I checked into my hotel room, which was very cheap, and I realised why. It had a air conditioning unit that squeaked like every couple of seconds, and it literally hung over a motorway. So when a lorry went past underneath on the motorway, it would rattle me in my bed. Until the morning came and I went to the trade show. I walked up and down thousands and thousands of booths and had people shouting at me and all the colours and the noise, and I remember feeling I hadn't slept and feeling really disorientated. And after 4 or 5 days of doing that, no sleep walking, I came across 5 factories that I thought were okay. When I got back to England, I started contacting the banks and went round each of the banks, sending them emails about my grand design to build this wonderful business, and I was frankly ignored by all of them. I eventually got an email back offering a meeting from a gentleman called Peter Rogers at Lloyds Bank. He called me and said, I've got some great news. I'm going to lend you £100,000 to start your business on an overdraft. I was like, amazing, Peter, that's great news. And then he carried on, I'm going to need you to sign into an open-ended personal guarantee. Amazing, Peter, still. And said, and also I'm going to have to take charge of your house. I signed into all of the paperwork, and when you sign into an open-ended personal guarantee with the bank, it feels a bit like the snake's eyes in the Jungle Book, where like he's saying, trust in me. And it feels very, very scary, and you feel like a piece of you has been taken. But none of this was deterring me. I was absolutely positive I was going to storm forward and grow a business and be successful, and I was being positive, and I felt sure that I could do this. After recruiting a warehouse manager and a salesperson and another director into my business, I don't know why I needed all those people, I launched my business to great fanfare of no one but me. So I flung open the warehouse doors and I was like, right, I am ready, I'm here, I'm good to go. On the 1st of September, a glorious thing happened. My daughter Elizabeth joined the world, so I had a newborn baby, I had a newborn business, and I was under quite a lot of pressure. So I had a list of retailers that I was calling every day. Pretty soon I realised that none of them were going to call me back. Throughout August and September, the business was just overheads and we were losing money at an alarming rate. By my calculations, I had until December before I had to reasonably close the business. Everyone was ignoring me. I was sending letters, I was sending samples, I was doing absolutely everything I could think of, but I was at my wit's end. And I'll never forget the feeling. I'll never forget the feeling of being quite so alone and scared, and the pressure was definitely mounting, and I could feel it in everything that I was doing. My voice messages were getting that little bit more desperate, and I was getting a little bit more emotionally fraught with the whole process. Literally searching down the back of the sofa for spare change so we could buy food. And all of it was building on me. I could feel the pressure. It felt like I was carrying around loads of bricks. And the whole thing kind of came to a head when one afternoon part of my warehouse roof fell in and almost landed on my warehouse manager, and I locked up my warehouse that night, and I got into my car and I felt the warmth of tears on my face and quietly cried, thinking, you know, how I was going to get out of this and how I'd let everyone down, let myself down, and how everyone's faith was misplaced in me. The feeling of desperation and misery was overwhelming, but I kept on ringing them. Voicemail after voicemail after voicemail. Until the end of October, a buyer called Any Chai from John Lewis called me back. It was her 38th message she told me I'd left her, and she politely said that I was ruining her life. And what did I want? And I was like, Annie, thank God you've called me back. I have got the best brand that I want to come and show you. And she said, look, we have a Dragon's Den style day once a year. This time it's at the end of November, and you can come. But the deal is, if we don't like your brand, if we don't like what you're offering, then you never call me again. And I was like, yes. I took that as a pretty fair deal. So I was like, okay, Annie, you got it. I'll be there. So I prepared a big presentation. I got samples already. I thought about everything I was going to say. And then on the morning of the pitch, I was woken up by a text message from my one member of sales staff who told me her wages had just cleared, and she was resigning with immediate effect and not coming back. And she didn't actually believe that my business was going to work. I had an extra half an hour from arriving at Paddington to actually get over to John Lewis head office. When I arrived, when we were rolling into Paddington, an announcement came over the tannoy saying that very sadly someone had killed himself on the underground, and because of that Paddington was completely stacked up. I got off the train, I ran towards the taxi queue, and the taxi queue was at least 2 hours long. I ran towards the underground, it was obviously closed, and I had 3 miles to go between Paddington Station and John Lewis head office. So I opened Google Maps and I put the address in. It was like 15-20 minute run. I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I held my juice cartons under my arm and I started running. And it went up like from just over 3 miles to 3.5 to 3.8 to 3.9 to 4 miles. And I realized in a blind panic that I was actually running the wrong way. And I was running away from my meeting, not towards it. And and I thought about my partner, I thought about the house, and I thought about my child, and I thought about the whole situation, and I felt exceptionally desperate. But I ran the rest of the way, and I arrived 15 minutes late with John Lewis. And a very nice junior buyer came to reception and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Bennett, but you've missed your slot, and there'll be another slot in 12 months. Now, there wasn't 12 months. There wasn't another 12 months to go. In 3 months, 2 months, I was going to be out of business. My house was going to be repossessed. My newborn daughter was going to be homeless, and I'm like, there isn't 12 months. And I was screaming this inside myself. There's not 12 months. I haven't got 12 months left. And this girl saw my face drop and saw my emotions change in the way I thought that this was all over. And she said, "Just sit down, Mr. Bennett, and I'll see if I can shorten the lunch break." And sure enough, good to her word, at 1:15, she came and got me, and I walked into this huge room with these slightly annoyed buyers sitting in a C shape. There was a horrendous silence, it's a horrendous heavy silence. I had soggy cartons, I blathered about juice and a brand and colour and design, and they all looked a bit perplexed. And I remember the most senior buyer in the room said, but it's just a charger and a carton, sir." I left, feeling idiotic, went to bed and got in the office early the next morning and just decided to keep going. At 10:30 that morning, I get a call from Annie at John Lewis. She says, how do you think it went, Joe? How do you think the pitch was? And I was quite honest. I said, well, it was awful, wasn't it? And she again, being very honest herself, she agreed. She said, yeah, it was pretty awful. It was actually the worst pitch we had all day. And I was like, great, Annie, thanks a lot. Let me just get on with doing my next call. And then she surprised me by saying, well, actually, the pitch was awful, but we really love the brand. And there was this silence. And we want to launch you. Okay. And we're ordering 5,000 units. So rather than celebrating, which I did at a later date, the whole of my business, all 4 of us, 3 of us since Emily resigned, sprung into action and got the chargers over from China. We flew them over and we found a UK company who could make the cartons, and we sat up all night for like 23 hours. Me and my 2 members of staff, Steph and Mick, who are still with the business now, folded cartons, literally folded cartons until my fingers bled. And we hit the deadline. We delivered the 5,000 units into John Lewis, and then all literally collapsed. I had pictures coming through from my friends showing me that I'd got my juice cartons into John Lewis, and it was amazing. But sell-in means nothing. Sell-out is everything. And so we waited a week, and then I called Annie. She said, "Oh, hi, Joe." And I said, "Hi, Annie, what's going on with sales?" She said, "I'll have a look for you now." And she typed into her computer, and she said, "Oh, we've got a system problem. I'll call you back this afternoon." A couple of hours went past. System problem means they haven't sold any, by the way. Like this is like, in my brain, like, I've sold them these, it hasn't sold, it's a disaster. She calls me back and says, "Oh no, I've got to the bottom of it. We didn't have a system error, Joe. We've sold 2,000 units in a week." And Juice was, and still is, one of the fastest selling brands that John Lewis has ever launched. And as more retailers saw more products in more stores, they all started to see what I was trying to do and took me more seriously as a brand, and my business started trading. And in January, O2 called me back and ranged me across all their stores. In February, Dixon's ranged me. In March, 3 ranged me. In April, Maplin ranged me. In May, Sainsbury's ranged me. And as you fast forward to 2017, we are very proud to be the market leaders, selling more plugs than Apple in the UK market. We sell more cables as well, and more power banks. I've been asked lots of times for advice for people that are starting businesses, and the one thing that I would say is just don't ever give up.